Going to be a walkthrough of my app, currently unnamed. It's an app that manages tasks. It's designed with business in mind so that you can, a user can assign tasks to either themselves or a subordinate. In business, it's not typical that a worker is going to be assigning a task to their supervisor, so that is not allowed in the task app that I've designed. So to show you how it works, I'm going to go ahead and sign in. I've created a couple user accounts. I've given the people names based on people that I work with so I can keep track of who's who. I've assigned everybody temporary passwords. Okay, so first off is Delroy. He's actually, Del is my boss's boss. So I'm going to demonstrate how we can create tasks. First thing to see is we've got a list here when you log in of your owned tasks. If you own a task, that means that it's assigned to you, so you're expected to perform that task. And you can see here that Dell has none. There's also got a created task, just a dummy task that I put together is do stuff. Anytime we have a task, it'll show the due date. And the reason it's the font is strikeout like that, the reason that there's a line through the task is that task is completed. So we'll come back to that and demonstrate how we can then delete tasks. But the first thing I want to do is we'll generate a new task. So we click new task. Every task has a short description, can have a long description if we want to add more detail. There'll be a due date. And then when you create a task, you can assign the task to either yourself, and we're in Delroy's account, so Del, or any one of your subordinates. So just to give you an idea who's who in these names, Del is my boss's boss. J Mike works directly for him. I work directly for J Mike, and Frank works directly for me. And I'll remind you of who's who in that order to help make sense of why we can or cannot assign tasks to different people. But because Del's the biggest boss that I have in the system here, he can assign tasks to anyone, including himself. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and have him assign a task to J Mike. And the reason we're assigning to J Mike is that I've actually given myself administrator access, something I put together so that I can easily go in and edit record or edit tasks and delete users and things like that. So because I've got that, my account doesn't act the same as all the others do. J Mike has normal access, so we're going to assign him a task and say Del assigns him a task. These tasks are not necessarily related to my work, but just tasks that could be created. So previously I put in laundry, so it existed there in the drop-in or drop-down, excuse me. So we're going to do that. I'll say the task is, and I'm just putting in for the long description who assigned it, who it's assigned to, so that it's easier to keep track of. Task assigned by Del to J Mike. Normally we wouldn't do that. The long description would be just a little bit more information about the task. We'll say that task is due by next week, assigned to J Mike, and we create the task. So now because we're in Del's account, sorry, here's our task. Here's something else we can do is add notes. If we feel like we need more description to add to the note, to add to this task, we can add a note. I'm going to hold off and show that later. So now that the task is built, we'll go back to the task list. As you can see, this site isn't, or the app isn't very visually appealing. I do plan on working on that later. But for now, the function works. So here we are. We're still logged in as Delroy. We created a task, laundry, which is due 5/11. It doesn't show up in owned tasks because we assigned it to J Mike. So now, in order to show you how that works for J Mike, I'm going to go ahead and log out. I'm going to log back in as J Mike to show you what it looks like for him. So we log out. Brings us back to our home page, which tells us either sign in or create an account. We're going to sign in. We'll sign in as J Mike using his temporary password. And here we go. Here's that laundry due 5/11 in his owned tasks. So something J Mike can do, he can add a note. say like, okay, we add a note and say Dell laundry is not in my job description. We create the note. And we'll say Dell hops on and sees that J-Mike has added a note to his task. Says laundry's not my job description. They go and they have a face-to-face and decide that, yeah, sure, J-Mike's going to do the laundry. Okay, so back to the task list. Some time goes by. J-Mike goes ahead and does the laundry. Now, in order to show that the laundry is done, his task is complete, all he has to do is click this checkbox. It takes a little bit of time there just because of how the server's going a little slow, but there you can see the owned task disappeared for J-Mike. All right. Now that J-Mike has completed that task, click the box, and it's gone. Now I want to show you what that looks like for Dell, because J-Mike has completed his task. So we log out of J-Mike, we log back in as Dell. Oops, Dell. Always his username, and got our temporary password. And there we go. Here's J-Mike's laundry task, due 5/11/2019. Okay, it's strike through font to indicate that the task has been completed. Now Dell can look. He can see maybe J-Mike might have put additional notes to say, you know, exactly what was done. If this was a bigger task, if it wasn't do laundry, if instead it was conduct training for 5 groups of people on some piece of information, there may be a note for like 5 different notes for the 5 different dates that training was done, so that there could be a clear record of who did what and when. But at any rate, now Dell is looking at this task. J-Mike is marked it complete, so now it's safe for Dell to delete the task. And now it no longer shows up on created tasks. It's important to note that once a task is deleted, it's deleted from the database. It no longer exists anywhere. So once we delete a task, it is truly gone. Okay, and then this was from a previous example of testing that I was doing, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this do stuff task. Okay, so now Delroy has no owned tasks, no created tasks. That's really it for new tasks, adding notes and completing tasks. Something else that we can do is edit a task. You can edit any task that you created. So for example, Dell right now is creating a do stuff task, assigning it to himself. Okay, so here's the task, do stuff. Owner's Dell, created by Dell. If I look at the task list, I should see, there it is, in both owned tasks and created tasks, because Dell is responsible for this task. He's the owner, and also he created the task. But because he created the task, he can go in and edit the task. So do a bunch of stuff, and we update that. Okay, so here we go. The task has been updated. So a user can edit any task that they created. And I made an error there. When you edit a task, you do have to make sure that you assign it to the correct person, because it doesn't remember who it was assigned to when you edit. So now we have to update the task, and it should show up in Dell's list again. There we go. Do stuff, bunch of stuff. Back to the task list. Shows up in both owned and created tasks. Okay, so that's editing a task. Now I'm going to assign a new task and go to J-Mike, and we're going to demonstrate some different validations that we do. So let's say, all right, J-Mike, you did my laundry, now wash my car. From Dell to J-Mike. And how about we do that tomorrow? We assign it to J-Mike. We create the task. And once the task is created, we're going to log out. We're going to log back in as J-Mike. Okay, and we're going to try to edit this task. So we go, and guess what? There's no edit button. There's also no delete button. Users can only edit or delete tasks if they created those tasks. The only function that a user can perform on a task is either adding a note or completing the task by clicking the checkbox. So some other things that the app does is it does validate input. So let's say I go to create a task and I don't put in anything. Every task is required to have a short description, so I cannot create the task without a short description. There we go. I found an error. I had to go back and do some troubleshooting and correcting the code, debugging. Now I think we've got it, so the next thing I want to show you is the ability to create an account. So if we go to create account, we get a form which allows us to create a user. To create a new user, let's come up with dummy user. Requested username, so it doesn't need to be an underscore there. Requested username, we'll call it dummy. Email, dummy, at dummy.dummy, good. Supervisor's name, sounds like somebody who might work for me. And password, we'll say temp. Okay, so we get a new user. Depending on what browser they're using, they may be able to save a password. We'll go ahead and log in. And we should see if everything worked correctly. Here we go. We got a new user with no tasks, no own tasks, no created tasks. And they create a new task, and the only people they can assign that task to is themselves, because nobody in the system at this point has dummy user as their supervisor. So that's that. The other function that I've got here is I do have the ability to edit, delete users, and also look at the list of all the users. I've limited that access to only a user that has a field. There's a Boolean field called administrator, which will be either turned on or off. By default, it's turned off, but I've gone in via the console just to turn on administrator for just myself so that I can edit and delete users. So here's me. Now I can go in. There's no button to get there. I haven't decided yet. I might make one, but then again, this isn't a functionality that I expect many people to have. So I think it may be okay that I actually have to type in users index. Then I get a list of the system users. A fake user is a user I created while I was messing around trying to make sure I was debugged. So now I can edit that user. All right, fake that, fake that, fake. Well, that's not a real email address. How about fake at fake.com? More reasonable. Okay, so there we go. Now if I go back to fake user, we see that fake at fake.com. So that worked. I don't want to keep fake user in my system, so I'll go ahead and delete. There we go. I've got my list again with no fake user. So again, deleting actually removes the record from the database, which means that we have truly destroyed that user. There's no getting them back. So delete should only be used when you're actually trying to completely get rid of some data that's in the database. At this point, I think I've shown you everything I've got to show. That's the end, and thanks for watching.